Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint Festive Highland cow with acrylics on a 9x12 canvas. So I'm doing this on 9x12, however you can do it on any size canvas. The background color is called Green Gray. This is a Liquitex Basics color. You can buy separately. If you don't have green gray, you can actually make a green gray. You can take for example, Hooker's Green Hue and mix that with black and white. You only need so you make like a gray with black and white. So just a lot of white, a little bit of black to make a light to medium gray color, and just add green in there and it gives you kind of a green gray color. You can also do the background in just gray. So you can use any gray color and paint the background gray. The other colors I'll be using in this tutorial are, so we will be needing Mars Black, Titanium White, and Hooker's Green Hue along with the green gray. We'll also be using Burnt Umber and Raw Sienna, so a light brown and kind of a golden light brown for the color of the Highland cow. Primary colors, so you'll need primary yellow, primary blue. I only use the blue for literally these two lights, so if you want to just only use a teeny bit of blue for this or not use blue at all, you can take the blue out. And then Cad Red Deep for the scarf and the hat and little berries on the pine branch. 3 brushes for this, 3/4 flat and number 4 round brush and the 3/8 inch angle brush. I only use the angle brush to paint the pine needles on the pine branch. So those are the Princeton Velvet Touch brushes. And so again, 9x12 canvas, you can do this on any size canvas. You also need a pencil to draw the cow, and I have a tracer for this. If you don't want to draw the cow, Highland cows are kind of tricky animals to draw. I have a traceable that you can use instead. So let's go ahead and get started. The background is very, very basic background. It basically is the green gray and titanium white. I love this green color. It's such a pretty color to use in a Christmas painting because it's kind of a light pastel-y green color, and it looks really pretty when you mix white with it. So all I'm doing is I'm taking my 3/4 flat brush, and I have the green gray and the white, and I'm just kind of painting the entire thing with green mixed with white, and you're just going to do these sort of angle paint strokes that blend the two colors together, and that creates kind of a variation of green and white. If you want, you can make the center part look just slightly lighter. Sometimes it helps with giving contrast with our main subject, which is the cow, and give him kind of this glowing color behind him, makes him stand out better. But I didn't really do that. I just kind of filled my canvas at this point with green and white, angled paint strokes, trying not to mix the colors all the way. And when you do this, it gives a nice varied look in the background, so it's not just a solid color. When you are done with the background, you could also paint the sides with the leftover paint on your palette. You'll want to wait for this to dry, and then we'll be doing the drawing portion next. So if you're using the Traceable, just use a regular sheet of graphite paper and place it under the template and then trace. If you're drawing this with me, let's go ahead and just draw with a regular pencil. So I'm going to start by drawing the snout, and I'm going to do this kind of in the lower section. So to find kind of the halfway point and then go down a little bit from halfway point, and we're going to do kind of a curvy shape that dips down, and then on each side kind of curves inwards, and then this part curves upwards. It's almost like a bow or a bone shape, and then a little curve below for the mouth. So if you want to know my measurement, there's about 3 inches of space from the bottom edge of the canvas to the bottom of the mouth, if that helps. And then do 2 little ovals on each side for the nostrils. And I'm going to do kind of these 2 curved lines. I'm actually making this just a little bit darker, but I'm going to start about right here in the center part, kind of a curved line, and then same over here, curved line, So forming his head, and then I'm going to go up a few inches from the top of that nostril and just do a little curved line. We only see one eye on this Highland cow, and it's a very simple closed eye design, so we don't have to do any detail work for the eyes. And then I'm going to do the hair. So I'm going to start a little bit above the eye, and I'm going to do the left side, do zigzag lines. I'm going to form this hair part that is kind of swooped over to the left and goes up and creates a curve at top. And then on the right side, kind of the same thing, but it swoops just a little bit higher so it doesn't cover the eye and also creates a curve at the top. I'm going to do the two horns next, so about right here on the top of the head, I'm going to do a curved line and go outwards. So I end up changing these horns later to just not have that kind of bend in them, but I'm going to draw them this way first. They are a little bit thicker on the bottom, and then they go thin to almost a point, but the end is kind of more of a curve. This one on the left, so you want to kind of line them up. This one is going to kind of go off the canvas just because the cow is a little bit off-center towards the left, so we have not as much room on the left side, but same thing lined up. If you want to draw the horns so they're just a curve, like in the final picture, if that's easier to just draw them that way, you can. I drew them this way because then I'm going to change them later. And then, so the ears, I'm going to kind of draw them behind the horns, just kind of these simple kind of curves and with some zigzags on the bottom for the fur. And then his hat, I'm going to make the bottom part of the knit hat about kind of center to where the bottom of the horns are, so kind of center of the horns. It goes up a little bit, so maybe like an inch high for the rim of the knit hat, and then two curved lines. We have all this space up here, so we want to make, if we want to make a bigger hat, we can. And then just kind of a wavy circular shape for the fuzzy part of the hat. Next, I'm going to draw the scarf. So I'm going to start a little bit above his snout area and do a curved line. It hugs the neck, so just kind of this oval shape that goes around where the neck is. And then we have a piece of the scarf that's hanging over, so a kind of curved shape, and then a piece that hangs under. We see part of his body over here on the left and part over here on the right, so we can kind of draw some of the edging of his fur, but we don't really have to be super detailed with it. And our cow is going to have a piece of pine in his mouth, so we can draw that too. So about right here, line sticking out and little pine needles. I always say this, but we can adjust our drawing when it's time to paint it in. You don't have to paint inside of the lines that you drew. I'm going to do the kind of Christmas lights, and we can have fun and kind of have them wrap around up in the upper left area, but I'm not going to draw the actual lights, just the cord for the lights. So now that we're done with our sketch for our Highland, we can start painting it in. So on our paint palette, we're going to need titanium white, burnt umber, Mars black, and raw sienna. So those four colors are going to be used to paint our cow. And I'm going to use a number 4 round brush. I'm going to start by painting the nostrils. So super easy, just black. Paint your little ovals in, and then little kind of curves, so it almost turns into like a comma shape on each side, so curve going outwards on each side of the snout. I'm going to rinse the black off of my brush next and make a light color. So I'm going to take white and the raw sienna, about equal parts white and raw sienna. It's going to make a really light brown. I'm going to start painting this in. So there is going to be some darker areas in the snout, but right now I'm just going to paint most of it this color. If you want to just go ahead and paint the entire snout this color because that's easier, you can do that. You just want to go around the little black areas. And if you end up dragging black paint in like I did, that's okay. Just kind of mix that in with the rest of it. It'll just turn a little bit gray, but that's fine. Just try not to mix too much black into this and go around that. Then I'm going to make the bottom part just slightly darker. So I'm actually blending in burnt umber on the bottom of the snout and blending it upwards. And this is going to make it so the bottom of the snout, not the chin mouth area, but this part that we're painting, the bone shape, is darker on the bottom and lighter at the top. So I blended that dark brown on the bottom. And then the mouth, the chin, bottom of the mouth, this area right here, is brown mixed with that lighter brown. So that part shows up darker so that stands out better from the rest of the snout. Next, I'm going to take my unrinsed brush. So I have that raw sienna, the white, and a little bit of brown on my brush. And I just wanted to grab a whole bunch of raw sienna. If you rinsed your brush, that's fine. Just grab just raw sienna. And we are going to paint the area, just a teeny tiny bit of burnt umber in there just to kind of darken that brown just a bit. The head area is what we're painting, so it should show up darker than the snout. We want the snout to be lighter so it stands out. And I'm painting the area of the head, not including the hair. So I'm just kind of dragging my paint strokes kind of up and outwards. Of course, I need to outline the snout, so I got to kind of do curvy paint strokes there. You will need to paint over that curved line for the eye and paint over some of the hair, but that's okay. We will repaint the eye and repaint the hair later. I'm going to grab just a little bit of dark brown and kind of blend dark up here. So it's just a tad bit darker towards the top. And I'm going to start painting his hair. So you don't need to wait for this to dry to do this. However, if it's so soaking wet in that area, then do let it dry because we don't want this to mesh in too much color with the color of his face. So for the hair, without rinsing the brush, I'm going to grab white. We don't want it to be pure white, just a really, really light brown. It's got to be lighter than the color that we just used. It's kind of the same color as the snout. And I'm just going to take my round brush and kind of go and sort of redraw that shape that we drew earlier that we just kind of painted over. I'm going to do that on both sides. So remember the left side has his hair really just covers like half his face. And I'm doing these kind of curved paint strokes that kind of flow and go in the direction of the hair. You can kind of create hair texture by doing some color variation. So if you go back and reload your brush in just white and just kind of go back over that base color, and it kind of creates the strands in the hair. And we'll do darker strands in here too as well. I'm kind of just starting with the lighter base color for the hair. His ear, same thing, just kind of create that shape and then just kind of drag your hair strokes downwards to create the hair that's kind of hanging down for his ears. And this is still titanium white and raw sienna, maybe a little bit more white for the ears. It's just slightly lighter. And then I'm going to go back and do a little bit more raw sienna over that first layer. But you're just kind of dragging your brush down, releasing the pressure, dragging it down, releasing the pressure to create that loose kind of hair stroke. I'm going to go and do some dark. So if you're doing this and it's really meshing together too much, wait for it to dry before doing this dark part. But I'm going to do black. And if it's too dark, you can just do black mixed with brown. I'm going to just kind of go back over what I just painted on his hair parts, but just do very loose, dark colored strands in there. Don't want to overdo it. Just a few little kind of loose, dark strands. Without rinsing the brush, I'm going to go back and grab raw sienna. If your brush is overloaded at this point, that's fine. Rinse it off, kind of start over. I'm going to paint the body area, so that everything below the scarf next. This is going to be kind of the first layer, and the second layer is going to be his like wavy hair texture. But right now, I'm just kind of filling this in. I'm only loading my brush into the raw sienna at this point. However, we can, if you want to mix a little white in there or a little brown, you can. We're pretty much kind of scribbling these paint strokes in to get that first layer of color. You want to make sure that you're not painting over the scarf at this point. You can paint over it a little bit, but I don't want to lose that shape. So I am adding a little bit of white in there as well. I could even, I'm going to just a teeny bit of water to my brush. And right here, kind of make those paint strokes kind of go outside the lines, gives it that little bit of fur texture. It's okay if there's still a little bit of background color showing through, but for the most part, this is all filled in. And then I'm able to do this next. So I'm gonna grab just white on my brush. I'm gonna start painting these curvy, wavy paint strokes for the hair. This is all wavy lines going in a downward direction, and that white is blending with that color below it to create different variations of color. We don't have to think about realistic looking fur at this point. Just have fun, wavy, fun paint strokes, and that's creating that hair layer for the cow. I'm going to go back in here and actually do a little bit of white in this, especially right here. I wanted that area to kind of be outlined just slightly where that hair piece is. So it creates a little bit of contrast on the edges of the hair. Just loose, light colored lines, and I kind of maybe drag it down a little bit over the head. Not trying to turn the hair white, I'm just creating kind of lighter color in this, and I'll layer that up later with maybe some more color, darker color. If this is dry, we can take our black and do a little curved line for the eye. Such an easy way to do an eye. We don't have to detail that up at all. And then maybe a few more darker color paint strokes for the hair. I'm going to rinse my brush off all the way next and do his horns next. So we need the number 4 round brush and just titanium white, no other color. And I'm going to paint. I'm going to make the horns more of kind of a bended shape like this instead of making them have like an elbow shape. It's more resemblance of this type of Highland cow that I'm painting. So it's kind of, it gets, the horn starts above the ear, it's thicker, and then it gets thinner, it kind of gradually grows thinner and goes to not a point, but more of a curve for the points. So it just bends a little bit, kind of points upwards. If you end up dragging some of that brown into that color, that's okay. So paint it solid white first. And then we'll do the other one, lined up, same style, starts out thick, curves and bends and goes to kind of a curve at the end. However, our horn on this side, for me, it goes off the canvas just because of the position that the cow is in. It's a little bit offset to the left. Yours may or may not be going off the edge of the canvas. It just kind of depends on how you drew it. Yours is going to look different from mine, and that's okay. So there's his horns. It actually kind of looks like the cow's head is tilted just slightly, which makes one horn just slightly higher on the right than it is on the left. It's just how mine ended up. And then you do a little tiny black outline on the bottom and then blend it in. So that's going to give you your shadow on the bottom of the horn. You want to do that before this dries so it can blend. So teeny tiny bit of black on the bottom. Wipe the brush off a little bit and then kind of brush over it a couple times, and that will get it to blend. So you have dark shadow bottom, kind of a medium gray in the middle, a bunch of white at the top. So when you blend, I like to wipe the brush off so there's not too much paint on the brush. Sometimes if you're blending and your brush just is overloaded, it doesn't blend very well. It's easier to blend when there's less paint on the brush. And I'm going to start painting his scarf and hat in next. This is the color Cadmium Red Deep Hue. You can definitely change the color of the scarf and his hat to whatever color you want. Blue would be pretty, green, anything that would be contrasting against the light green background. So a dark green would be pretty. So I'm going to use the number 4 round brush for this, and I'm just going to start painting the shape of the scarf in. So I am not going to follow my drawing in. I'm actually going to make my scarf a little bit smaller than what the drawing is. If you use the Traceable is pretty accurate because I make those traceables based on the final, my final painting. I trace the shapes of it, so it'll be very similar to the size and shape of the finished results. So same thing over here on the left, it's smaller, it doesn't go out as wide. And just kind of outlining the bottom part of that mouth, filling it in. So the scarf shouldn't be overlapping any part of his mouth or snout area. If you end up painting over any of it, that's fine. When it dries, you can go back and repaint it. Sometimes it's confusing to figure out what's overlapping what. There is a little bit of space below that scarf for like the frill. This piece over here, I'm going to add a very tiny bit of black. You only need like a dot of black mixed in with that red just to get that to be darker. And that is darker because it's behind, and because we're painting it darker, it's going to stand out from that other scarf piece. You may notice there's like a little piece of blank canvas to the left of his snout where his head is. You may have the same issue too. I'm going to rinse and grab this color again and just paint that part in. Because I adjusted my scarf to make it a little bit smaller, I have some area that just needs to be painted in. So I just used the same color as his face and just kind of filled that area in. If you want, you can actually just make that area more hair. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm actually just adding more hair texture. It's going down and just kind of dangling in that area. The final version of this, there's a little bit of hair overlapping the scarf, but we're not going to overlap hair over the scarf just yet because we'll get red streaks in his hair. I don't really want to do that. And right here, just filling in any blank area after you get that scarf filled in where you want a little bit of hair. So there's no background color really showing through at this point. I'm going to rinse, and I'm going to add a little bit of highlighting to this scarf by grabbing titanium white and you want to maybe do this before the scarf is dry. If your scarf has dried too much at this point, mix red and white together to make a lighter tint of red, and just in there do some lighter red tints. And then this piece right here that overlaps, I'm making the direction of the paint stroke go downwards, and also it's lighter, and that kind of gives it that three-dimensional look of that piece wrapped around and overlapping the part of the scarf that's around his neck. So using a little bit of white, and that creates that overlapping effect. Part of that ended up painting over his snout, and we can fix that later. So if any of your scarf ended up going over any part of his mouth or nose, you can retouch that up later. And then over here on the right part of the scarf, kind of the same thing, blending that light color or that light red in there in a curved direction. I'm going to paint the hat in. So the hat is the exact same kind of red. So we start on the bottom of the hat, and this is going in a curved direction. I'm going to make this overlap the bottom or the base of the horn. So it's actually going to go like this. And then same thing on this side. My hat is a little bit going at a slight angle, and I think that's because the cow's head is tilted slightly. That's just how it ended up when I drew it. Yours might not be going slanted, and that's okay, or yours might be going more slanted. That's also okay. And for this part of the hat, I'm going to alter that color a little bit by adding just a little bit of white in there, and that's going to lighten it up. It's going to help it to stand out from the bottom part of the knit hat. So outline the shape of it, and again, this is just Cad Red Deep and white, and then fill it in solid. We're going to add some knit texture to this later, but for now it's just going to be this solid sort of lighter red color. You don't have to blend your colors all the way if you're mixing them on the canvas. For this part right here, this is going to eventually be a much lighter color, but I'm going to start out with just red and white, so it's kind of the same color as the color that's on the top part of the hat. And I'm going to start in the center and kind of just drag paint strokes outwards in a circular direction to form that fuzzy part. When that dries, we'll go back over and with another layer of bright white. Kind of blended a little bit of that lighter color on the bottom, but I don't want to make it too close to that color. So that's a first layer of our knit hat. We'll have to let that dry before we can add more detail to that. This is actually a good time to take a break and just let everything dry, because we're going to be doing details in this next step, and we don't want anything to be wet at this point, so it's easier to work this when everything's dry. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch up what needs to be touched up here. So this part, I'm going to make sure that's overlapping my scarf, so I went ahead and retouched that part up. And then right here, I'm actually going to outline the bottom part of his mouth with just a lighter color. That's white and raw sienna, and I'm still using the number 4 round brush. I'm going to make some of his hair pieces overlap the scarf on the left. Your hair for your cow might be a little bit different. It may not be overlapping the scarf. It just kind of depends on how yours ended up looking. Adding a few more lighter strands, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of light color on the top part of his snout. Again, very, very light brown. It's white. I have white that meshes with just a little bit of raw sienna on my paint palette to make it a very light brown color. So I outlined the top part of that, the nose, snout area, a little bit more light color just on the bottom of the mouth. A few more strands over here. Next, I'm going to take just the titanium white and I'm going to do the little kind of frill on the end of the scarf. So using the round brush, and I'm just going to drag little dashed lines, and it might depend on how much space you have down here. So little dashed lines for the frill of the scarf. And then I'm going to take my white, I'm twisting my brush right here because I know I'm going to do a thin line, but I'm going to do a very thin sort of outline right on the edge of that part of the scarf. And then I'm going to do black, and I'm going to kind of do the same thing but do some darker colored little frill on the end of the scarf. Kind of create some contrast in that area, gets it to stand out a bit better. Next, I'm going to do black lines on the bottom of the hat. I'm actually going to kind of rinse my brush and start over with the black here. Black, and mix a teeny bit of red in there. So it's not exactly pure black. It's like a really, really dark red. So black with red, about equal parts black and red together. And just do lines on the bottom of the hat. So they're going in curved directions, but you got to switch directions on each side of the hat. So the lines kind of go differently. Gives it that kind of three-dimensional look, but also we're trying to go for that knit look for his hat. So a sweater style. And then I'm going to outline the bottom edge of that, and right here as well, outlining this, but not the entire shape, just kind of loosely outlining it and then adding a few more lines in there, very, very loose, thin lines. So I'm rinsing my brush off now, and I'm going to do the knit texture on the top part of the hat. So the part just above, like right here. I want to double load my round brush in red and white. And I'm going to make these little 1 mark paint strokes forming a zigzag formation. So when you do that, that creates kind of that knit sweater look. I'm going to get some more red on my paint palette. So we can do it with just the red. It'll show up. Or we can double load in red and white. So it creates kind of a variation in colors. So some are lighter, some are darker, and you're just doing little marks that form a zigzag pattern. I'm going back over some of these to kind of make them stand out a little bit better. And then I'm going to go back over this piece with just the white. I'm going to drag these paint strokes from the center outwards, and because this layer is lighter than that first layer, it's going to stand out and give it that kind of fuzzy look. So just dragging this outwards, going outside the lines of that shape, overlapping that top part of the hat. And then we don't have to add little black lines in there, but we can. I'm going to rinse and grab just the black. I'm actually going to continue this outline right here, so it goes all the way, and then add just a few little kind of black marks on the hat. And then I'm going to outline the bottom part of his snout above the mouth. So right here, outlined. I'm going to touch up his horns next. So I'm taking this white and just kind of going back over this. You may find that your cow's horns don't need to be touched up and they look perfect how they are, so you don't have to do this. I'm taking this, kind of defining that shape a little bit better. And of course it's got to blend to the darker color on the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Second coat of paint for the horns. And then I'm going to take brown, maybe just a teeny bit of black in there as well. I'm just going to go back in and do some darker strands. So this isn't pure black, it's just brown with a little bit of black, so super dark brown. And I'm just going to go in here and add more loose lines going in the direction of the hair to create more hair texture, and on the ears as well. With the hair, it still needs to look kind of light in color, but adding these darker strands in there is okay. That helps add texture to the hair. We just don't want to over add darkness, because then we'll have some contrast issues with the cow. And I did the same thing with the body area, so some loose sort of wavy dark lines in this area as well. So the snout, the hair are lighter colors. The color of the face where the eye is, where we painted that flat and there's no hair texture there, that one is a darker color. Next, I'm going to load my paint palette with the color Hooker's Green Hue. I'm going to paint the pine needles. And so our cow is holding a little pine branch. This is optional if you don't want him to hold the pine branch. If you want to just kind of take that out and not do this step, you are definitely welcome to do that. This is the 3/8 inch angle brush. I'm going to start by doing dark brown stems. So mix black and brown together, black and burnt umber together. Use your angle brush to paint a line, and that line needs to kind of look like it's going through the mouth, so the mouth is holding the pine branch. Without rinsing the brush, then grab your green. We're going to start at the end of the branch. So to do these pine needles, you just stroke outwards using the end of the bristles to form the pine needle branch. So we're going to do this on both sides, on the right side and the left side, just dragging angled paint strokes outwards. So that's the dark layer. We're going to highlight this next. So without rinsing the brush, grab a little bit of white on your brush and then stroke outwards. Start from the end of the branch and move your way towards the end. And adding that little bit of white highlights the branch, makes that stand out. If you want to take this a step further, you can add a little bit of yellow into the branch as well. Taking the dark and actually re-outlining that line. I'm going back over that stem line really quick. So back over with brown and black just in the center of it. And then I'm going to load yellow onto my paint palette and show you how we can add kind of another layer of green, and it helps to brighten that color up as well. So rinsing the brush, and I'm going to use primary yellow. We'll also use this primary yellow later when we paint the lights. So you'll only need a little bit of this. So mix green and yellow together. If that doesn't work, or if it helps add a little bit of white into that, so green, yellow, and white, that makes a really bright green, and it gets it to be so opaque and bright, and that'll get some of those pine needles to really show up. Next, I'm going to do the fun string lights, and you want to make sure the horns are dry before you do this. Use a number 4 round brush in the color Mars Black, and very loosely paint a line that circles around or wraps around the horns. You got to pick up the brush where it's going under the horn, and then you're going to overlap it where it's going over. So this part, overlap for over, pick up the brush for under, and if you have another overlapping part, then overlap again. And because I have this lot of space in the upper left corner, I'm taking this and kind of making it go this way. Next, you want to rinse the brush and then load it into just titanium white, and we're going to paint each of the individual light bulbs for the Christmas lights. And you want to do white first just to allow your color, so when the white dries we'll paint color over it and it'll show up nice and bright. So I'm just doing like a little light bulb shape. I'm leaving a little bit of space between the bulb and where the black cord for the lights is. That way we can draw the little socket that the bulb is attached to. It's like a little egg shape, and you want to just kind of paint them all throughout. You can do more lights or less. If you want to do smaller lights, you can. And while I have white on my brush, I'm going to do one more layer in this, just in the center, but not cover up everything, but adding that one more bright layer really gives it that bright fuzzy look. Wait for this to dry and then load your palette with the colors that you'll be using for the Christmas lights. So my lights are dry now, and I'm going to use the number 4 round brush, and I'll use primary yellow to paint a few lights. I'll use primary blue, I'll use Hooker's Green Hue, and the red for red lights. Basically, you just paint over the white that you initially painted. If you go outside of the lines a little bit, that's okay. Next, I'm going to paint some bright, fun berries on the pine branch. So I'm going to rinse the brush and then do a red. So I'm going to do several red circles just on the end of this branch for little berries. It adds a pretty pop of bright red in that area. Rinse the brush, and then I'm going to do just titanium white, and I'm going to do like a little kind of curved, and I'm doing this before the red dries, so it is kind of blending with the red. little curve line on the left part of each of the circles to kind of give them that three-dimensional look. And I'm going to paint little snow dots in the sky with some fresh titanium white. So I'm just taking my brush and dotting little white snow dots kind of all throughout. If you want to paint snowflakes in this, you can. And then I'm going to highlight or add white just on the top part of his snout. And then I'm going to take the white and do some loose sort of hair strokes again, but this time just kind of on the edges. Give him that kind of frosty hair look. Just a few sort of white lines. It just adds a nice pop of brightness. A few more wavy lines down here. Then I'm going to add little kind of white dots on top of the berries for a little frost kind of settling on the berries. Next, I'm going to mix a gray for the sockets of the light bulbs. I'm going to rinse the brush and I'm going to mix black and white together. So grab black and white, about equal parts black and white, maybe a little bit more white so it's not dark. And so it's more like a medium gray. So I'm just going to take this and just do little socket shapes that are kind of overlapping the bulb and then touching the string. They don't have to be perfect, so that the little bulbs are attached to the string. Next, I'm going to do optional sweater texture on the scarf. If you want to leave the scarf plain, you're definitely welcome to do that. If you want to do like a pattern, a plaid pattern, or stripes on the scarf, you can. I decided to just kind of continue that sweater texture, that knit texture that we did at the above on the hat, but I'm going to do the same thing on the scarf. And so it's still the same concept of mixing red and white. So where it's dark, you want to have a little bit more white on your brush so that it stands out. And you just do little marks that are going in a zigzag rows of marks. And you just double load your round brush in the red and the white. You do little zigzag marks. I'm going to do this on all of the scarves. So when you get to the dark one, I didn't use much white right here. I'm just using the red and it's showing up against that dark red base color. So that still keeps it so that part of the scarf is dark. When the lights are dry, and you want to make sure that they're completely dry, otherwise they're going to smudge if you do this. We're going to paint highlights on all of the Christmas bulb lights. I'm going to load my palette with some fresh titanium white, use a clean number 4 round brush, and I'm going to do a little highlight on each of the lights. I'm going to do like a little dot and a curve. So I'm going to do that to each of the lights, little dot and curve. And then dot and curve. So on the left side of the lights, doesn't matter which way, if they're going up or down or diagonal, just do it on the left side, on the same side of each of the bulbs. Left dot curve. This one we can just pick a side. I did it on the bottom for that one. This one, left side, dot and curve. If you want to, you can kind of highlight each of the sockets, but I decided not to do that for all of them. And then extra snow dots all throughout the background if needed. And this is the conclusion of how to paint a festive Highland cow. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.